Okay, well, 2 o'clock, you're on time, so we're going to get going. Thanks for being a part of this. This is my first ever live sessions, so I'm kind of nervous, but also excited at this opportunity to talk about a subject that I am very passionate about in the area of trauma-informed care. Uh, just a brief introduction. I am Ron Huxley. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist. I've been in the field I guess about 34 years now, give or take. And so um, I'm coming to you from the Trauma Champions and looking at trauma informed care in the workplace, home, and community. And so today's topic, and we'll have more for sure, is on the 5 benefits of post traumatic growth. So we're gonna get right into that. I just first want to say thank you for everyone here for all the work that you do in the field in whatever capacity it might be, to help people who are dealing with suffering, basically, dealing with adverse events. We all have adversity in one form or another. Um, Many of us can be in the field of education, public health, nonprofit leadership. Um, we can be working within faith communities, social workers, counselors, therapists. We all are carrying very heavy loads. And everywhere you go, you tend to see burnout, compassion fatigue, and just a constant demand that we're juggling, trying to help others. We're helpers, and so helpers help. But as a result of that, there is a cost sometimes, and we can suffer as a result of that. And in effort of doing that, have very limited resources. It feels like there's a rising level of community trauma or trauma around the world in different forms, and we have a constant pressure trying to meet certain outcomes and um, while we stay present for those that we're serving and being able to heal ourselves. So it can always feel like we're moving from one crisis to another, and maybe sometimes like we never are moving on beyond them. Well, a lot of us understand what post traumatic stress is. Post traumatic stress disorder is a fairly common understanding in the world, but not too many people actually know what's on the other side of trauma, and that is post traumatic growth. We're really familiar with a lot of the research and indicators about PTSD, but not too many people have actually heard about post traumatic growth. And post traumatic growth started back in the 1990s with a body of research, and there's a huge body of research and study looking at how people grow or transform beyond trauma. And so, this perspective of post traumatic growth frees us from the idea that healing simply means you got to get back to normal. It reminds us that while distress is very real and it must be treated, growth can be quietly unfolding right alongside of it. Post-traumatic stress is involves debilitating symptoms such as things like anxiety or flashbacks, and there's oftentimes an avoidance of anything that looks or feels or smells like trauma. Those are called triggers. And it's basically describing psychological distress or impairments that come as a result of a crisis or trauma that we've gone through. Post traumatic growth, on the other side, the counterpoint of it, means that we have had a profound, positive psychological change after a struggle with a challenging life circumstance. It's about finding new meanings and strength. Sometimes, unfortunately, we often think that PTSD and PTG or post traumatic growth are different ends of the continuum. Like we have post traumatic stress here and post traumatic growth here, and really not like that at all. They're not mutually exclusive. It's often like two rails on a railroad and a railroad track. And where while we're having symptoms and experiences of PTSD, we can be simultaneously also experiencing post traumatic growth. It's actually necessary for us to understand and deal with that PTSD in order for growth then to occur. But many times we can still be hurting, the wound could still exist while we're also maybe experiencing some other symptoms of what we would consider growth, a new meaning, a new experience, a new strength. So growth isn't always a silver lining. When people hear that growth after trauma, they sometimes imagine some type of optimism, like everything happens for a reason, which it might, but that's not what we're talking about here. Or sometimes they'll say, oh, just look on the bright side of things. That's not the silver lining that we're experiencing here. That interpretation minimizes people's pain and overlooks that complex, nonlinear nature of healing. Real post traumatic growth doesn't deny that we have suffering, it simply says that we are emerging from it. So, what is exactly post traumatic growth and how did it start? So, post traumatic growth started in the early 1990s by two researchers, Richard Tedeschi and Lawrence Calhoun. Now, when they were discovering post traumatic growth, they found five distinct benefits that came as a result of post traumatic growth. Now, they didn't have a model that they then started doing research to see if they could prove that model to be true. What happened is they were actually doing research, looking at how people dealt with adversities in their life and why some people seem to be more resilient than others, and others tend to have such a harder time trying to cope with the life changes that were going on for them. As a result of that, they discovered these five benefits. So it's what we call grounded theory approach. So the five benefits came out of the studies that they were doing around bereavement, serious illness, accidents, combat, that kind of thing. So they didn't start with a predefined model. But these benefits are five things. The first one is a new appreciation for life. Number two is closer or more meaningful relationships. Number three is a recognition of new possibilities in my life. Four is spiritual strength. And number five is spiritual or existential growth. So in this talk, we're going to look at each of those things individually. What are some of the transformative processes that are occurring in it? And then maybe some tools that you can use to facilitate that in your own life or in the life of the people that you're working with. So another common misunderstanding is that resiliency and post-traumatic growth are kind of the same thing. So like we're synonymous in some way. And I've been an error of saying one meaning the other. And the reality is they are very similar processes, but they're very different at the same time. Resiliency is that ability that we have to adapt or bounce back to a pre-trauma or pre-adversity state. If we go back to the level of function we had. So perhaps we got really badly sick and we missed work and we can't really function very well. And then we get well. And after we get well, we can go back to work and to our original level of functioning. So that's resiliency, is the ability to bounce back. Post-traumatic growth, on the other hand, is a transformative process where individuals experience new or higher level of functioning or perspectives than the original equilibrium. So resiliency is trying to return to a baseline, but sometimes in post-traumatic growth, that baseline doesn't exist. Let's say, for example, that our home burns down. As a result of our home burning down, that home no longer exists. So we can't go back to the home and we might get a new home. Maybe we'll move to a different area that we actually like maybe more than we had before, but the loss and all of our items, all our personal items, the pictures, all those things are gone. So we can't go back to that level of functioning. We had to grow beyond that level of functioning or baseline into a new level. Resiliency is often evident during the adversity. So someone's going through something difficult and you're watching that person and you're noticing how resilient they are, how well they can cope or manage through the difficulty things that they're going through. Whereas in post traumatic growth, what they're saying is it doesn't really show up until after the crisis has already occurred. So you can have both processes occurring. Someone can be resilient and to get through that event, and then after going through that event, they might see some evidences of these new post-traumatic growth occurring once more. So the outcome again in resiliency is stability and coping. So we're teaching a lot of coping skills, how to manage with the stress levels, with the pain. And then in post-traumatic growth, the outcome is transformation or enhanced well-being. So someone in resiliency might say, I'm going through a tough time, but I'm okay. I'm getting by. I'm managing. That's resiliency. Post-traumatic growth would say, I've been through a hard time. I'm not great yet, but I'm actually growing in some ways. And in some examples, you even hear people say, "Well, I'm kind of actually happy it happened." I mean, I'm not happy it happened, but I've experienced this level of growth, in this in my life that I didn't think it was possible, or it wasn't possible because of what I was doing before. A quick example is that several years ago in the real estate crash here in California or in the United States, um, we lost our home. And as a result of losing our home, we couldn't go back to that home. And so that was a crisis event. But not having that crisis event allowed, and then also along with that, my wife lost her job, and I was going through a merger in the company that I was running, and I wasn't quite as happy as I was before with what I was doing. I was suffering some burnout, compassion fatigue. But by not having the home, not having a mortgage, we suddenly had to realize, oh, we could kind of do anything we want to. There was a certain level of freedom that came from that that said, oh, what would we do if we could do anything or move anywhere or go anywhere? Because our children were already out of the home, and so we at that point we thought, well, what would we like to do? And so we started brainstorming what we'd like to do and what new careers we'd like to have and what would we like to experience. And so we traveled and we did new careers and we developed um, new ways of living, and eventually came back and got a home again, which we're in now. But um, so in that way, we did come back to it, but that was post-traumatic growth. We discovered new experiences of life as a result of the trauma we went to. But it was only once the thing was lost was that possibility even there. Otherwise, we would have still been in the same home, probably happy and doing the same kind of things, which might have been happy, but we experienced a transformative process. So feel free if you have questions as we're going along to pop them in there, and I can stop and answer anything that you have as we're going. So both resiliency and post-traumatic growth are are necessary. And again, if you just joined us, we're talking about the 5 benefits of post-traumatic growth, which is the other side of trauma. But post-traumatic growth requires a deeper, more profound level of adaptation or evolution of life. So let's dig into the 5 benefits. The first benefit we're going to look at is increased appreciation for life. So many survivors describe a shift from being in the trauma where life feels very fragile, they feel very vulnerable, they don't feel safe, to a certain revelation that life is precious. So after the trauma, ordinary moments like maybe it's a morning coffee, or a grandchild's laugh, or having a nice quiet walk, they take on deeper meanings than they had before because of the trauma that you went through. For professionals like us, this isn't about ignoring the pain in our life or the people that we're working with. It's about noticing how gratitude and presence can emerge even after the aftermath of hardship, which we think in the during the midst of it, how could I ever be present or feel a sense of gratitude for my life because there's so much pain? So when we're helping clients or consumers recognize and savor these little gifts that come to them, we're not just reducing their stress level, we're also fostering growth and giving them a renewed purpose. And oftentimes we see this element of growth happening in their life because they have a sense of purpose. They have a sense of plan. They want to achieve new goals. They're starting to appreciate things that they hadn't been able to appreciate before. So the transformative process is that they're have a heightened gratitude for ordinary moments. They're reprioritizing what truly matters in their life. Maybe there's new things that they thought was important that no longer are important, and there's new things now that are important. And as a result of that, they're now going to a level of some. So we actually want to look at some tools that will help people facilitate that as you're working with individuals. So one tool that I like to use facilitate this benefit of increased appreciation for life is a daily gratitude practice. And there's been a lot of talk about it. It has a very scientific background, but we found that just journaling 3 things every day and doing it in a very mindful way, like just great. I'm grateful for my grandkids. I'm grateful for my home. I'm grateful for this cup of coffee or tea. I'm grateful for my job. Rather than just talking about things that we're grateful for, which is fine, you want to think about that gratitude and write those gratitudes out with as much sensory detail as possible. In doing so, it has a more richer, authentic experience in our life and can really create some greater sense of appreciation. So the authenticity and that appreciation together are very important. Another way to facilitate that is what we call mindful savoring. And this is stopping throughout the day to notice really little moments that come up that are actually sweet or beneficial, or you feel a sense of peace at that moment. And sometimes that feels so rare. So when you have them, we want to savor them. I like to think of it as you just bought a $20 piece of chocolate. You're not just going to throw it in your mouth and chew it and swallow it, right? You're going to savor it. You're going to taste it. You're going to experience it. You're going to try to get as much of your money's worth as you possibly can because you paid a lot of money for it. So you don't want to just swallow it down. Right? So that's what savoring is. It's mindfully savoring the different events throughout the day. What's happening is that your nervous system is cataloging these different experiences and creating a shift, which is essentially neuroplasticity. And we won't go into all of that right now, but that is the ability for your mind to reformat in a way that allows you to receive. So we go through a lot of trauma. People who are trauma victims, trauma survivors, they tend to have sort of a negativity bias, right? It's hard to experience good things because their mind is in a hypervigilant state looking at problems because they don't want to suffer any more pain. They're already in a lot of pain, they don't want to suffer more, and the nervous system says we must protect the organ. It's a protective response. And it's a good one. We need that protective response, but how do we grow from that? How do we move into a place? And that's where we go through looking at savoring. Another way to savor is to pull out your phone and look at a few of the pictures, just scroll through there and look at one that comes to mind that was a really beautiful moment in your life, a joyful memory, a joyful experience, and just savor that picture for a few seconds and notice the feelings that you have, the sensations that come up. They're going to be very much like the original experience that you had because your body has those stored, but can't bring those back up to our awareness because of all the other pain that we've experiencing. So it's a way to sort of shift the script on our nervous system. The third one tool for this toolbox of increasing appreciation for life is to notice and name everyday gifts. The ability to stop, to notice, and actually say the event itself is one that's very powerful. And otherwise, it just sort of goes right past us, and we don't get a chance to really enjoy that experience. It's literally stopping for a breath, the length of a breath, to name something beautiful or meaningful that's happening right now. Being in the moment is where we appreciate life, not living in the past of regrets or the uncertainty of the future, but that's a way to train our nervous system to really appreciate what's happening to us right now. So if you're new to this live session, we're talking about post-traumatic growth, or specifically the 5 benefits of post-traumatic growth. We just looked at the first benefit, which is increased appreciation for life. The second benefit is more meaningful relationships. These are deeper, more relationships in life. Trauma often will isolate us, and many survivors find that hardship clarifies who matters and what matters in their life that maybe they didn't realize before. And invites them to a new level of empathy and vulnerability for other people who've had to suffer the similar kind of thing. So compassion can actually increase as a result of going through a hardship. I begin to realize that some things that I thought was important are no longer important to me, and I'm letting go of those. And the other things that are important, I want to focus on those. I noticed that when I've had people in my life who have passed away through illnesses and other situations, it has caused me to reflect on my own life and what is more important. It makes me realize that life it can be short, and I really want to make more meaningful relationships that I have. And those relationships that maybe weren't very healthy, I've had to let those go and actually have benefited from that experience. So as professionals, we can nurture this by helping people we're working with identify and strengthen their supportive ties. Is in their life? One way of doing that is what I call support mapping. And these are essentially concentric circles where the very center of that circle are the people that are the most meaningful to them. That's usually going to be like one or two people. It might be a handful or more, but for most of us, it's going to be like one or two people. And if you're someone working with them, you might be it at this moment in time. But who are those people that they could truly rely on and truly talk to? I often say, like, if you have a really exciting event, who's the first person you call, right? Or if you have some really difficult situation, who's the first person you call? Those are probably those people in the inner circle. And then from there, the rest of the people will be in the circles as they go farther and farther out. They become less and less reliable, less and less meaningful. They're important, but they're like the neighbor that you see once in a while, or the people at the post office or the grocery store. You joke with them, talk with them, but you don't have a relationship, right? So we looking at this support map helps them understand where their focus and energy would be best spent. Sometimes people can't find those people in their life, and that's where we as helpers come in to play. Structured relationships, um, sometimes we used to call them artificial versus natural relationships, but they're people where they depend on you and they go to see you, they talk to you, they meet with you. You know their most intimate details. You know their health issues. You know everything about them, and so those people feel safe with you, and you just demonstrate a sense of safety. And that safety, that experience of being with you, is a way of recognizing that someone cares for me, someone is interested in me, someone values me, someone sees me. And so that's really an essential place to start for many people. And then they can try to move from there. And then compassion focused therapy or compassion focused um, life allows people to suddenly make connections with other people who have suffered. Like I work with a lot of people, a lot of different adversities. I haven't experienced all their adversities. I have experienced some. And when I've gone through those similar kind of experiences, I have a better awareness of kind of what they're going through and how maybe I might be able to help them. For example, I meet with a lot of people who have anxiety. I've suffered a lot of anxiety myself. As a result of having a lot of anxiety and panic attacks, I can better understand people who are going through similar kind of situations. So I have a greater level of compassion for them. And that allows for a more deeper, more meaningful relationship in my work. And the same can happen for you as well as helping other people. And sometimes what happens is we get involved in activities, volunteer or otherwise, in the areas of where we've come out of, where we've suffered, where we've hurt, where we've had to survive. And from that, we learn to thrive by helping other people navigate through those as well. So that's another way you can help that transformative process. So just throw into the chat, if you will, who is one person and you don't have to put a name, you can just put a role, um, or a group that helped you feel supported during a hard time. Was it a spouse? Was it a friend? Was it a parent? Was it a child? Was it a support group, a therapist? Who was it that helped you through a really difficult time? If you could just jot in there really quickly as we're going, moving on to the next benefit. Who really helped you feel supported during a hard time that you had? Okay, so benefit number three, greater personal strength. A third benefit of post traumatic growth is greater personal strength. Many survivors will describe a turning point when they realize, if I can make through that, I can handle almost anything. And anyone who's gone through trauma or adverse events, was really all of us, particularly very difficult situations, we have survived. Just the fact that we showed up today, the fact that we showed up to live life, to get out of bed, that shows a certain level of strength that is inherent in us. And if we're strong enough to survive those experiences, maybe we're still working through them, we can then look at, oh, we can handle, if I can handle that, I can handle anything. I remember some of my earliest work was really with some difficult populations and individuals, but as a result of going through those difficult experiences, I felt more confident later in my career to help other people because this just seemed so much easier than what I had dealt with before. Because I dealt through some difficult things at the time. It was difficult. It was hard. But going from that to this showed that I had some strength. So you want to help people that you're working with understand that they're doing more than just surviving. They are actually thriving. And what are their inner courages, their confidences? What are beliefs that have helped them through this experiences? Help them realize it's not just you doing well, it's your sense of identity. I am strong because that's who I am, not just the coping skills I learned, which is part of the process, but it goes beyond just that. And we can guide them to help them understand that. Sometimes people will do like a strength assessment um, through practical exercises around that. Strengths Finder book could be a helpful one. Another one can be the Post Traumatic Growth Inventory, which is produced by Tedeschi and Calhoun. That looks at their top five strengths that we're talking about now, and it sort of rates them. on different levels. And you take it several I've taken it several times as a result of trainings I've done. And so as we take those, we see different levels. I've seen certain areas grow and some maybe get a little less and as life changes, but I've seen overall an increase in growth in these 5 benefits. And so it's very rewarding and validating to be able to see that. Other skills and resiliency, building sort of coping skills, mastery skills. These are areas that help people feel a greater sense of confidence because they've gone through tough stuff. I've seen a lot of people who have been through a lot of trauma suddenly decide later in life, I want to go back to school. I want to get a new career. Always want to do this thing. And so they think before they didn't believe they could. And now they thought, well, if I can go through these difficult things, I could probably get through a master's program, or I could go in some training in this area, or I could just get up and move to some other area. It's scary, but I've done tough stuff. So that's the kind of thing you want to see, and it's evidence of this benefit in their life, a greater personal strength. So the fourth one is openness to new possibilities. After trauma, many people discover that the future is not locked to the past. That's a very difficult one to overcome. They begin to be able to imagine new roles, new goals, new directions that they never even considered before. So what felt like a dead end or impossible suddenly became a spark for creativity, for career changes, for a fresh life purpose. New possibilities are opening up. I have a best friend whose wife died a couple years ago, and after that, he's expecting to retire and to live his retirement out, and it didn't happen that way. And so he decided that he would move to a new area. They had actually just moved, and when she passed away, and he started building a life there. And he started getting involved in a boat rowing program, a yacht kind of club. And so they started rowing, and he'd never had an interest in that before. He was very athletic, and so he'd always been exercised regularly, but he'd never considered that. But now he has a passion for boating, which had never happened before. And it's something that came as a result, a new possibility in life that he could do. And so when my wife and I lost our home, we had new possibilities. Like let's travel. We're not encumbered with a home, so we could travel. We could go to different places. We could do new things. That just wasn't possible to us before. So new possibilities developed as a result of that. We want to help facilitate this transformative process by helping people dream. I often recommend that people do a dream list. I say write down 100 dreams. It could be as little or small. It can be for things you want to do, things you want to have, places you want to go. It could be anything. Just write the whole list down. And that's actually a lot harder than you would think to write 100 goals. Actually, when I did it, I think it got to about 44. It wasn't that many because it's a lot. But by writing them down, I noticed, and this is after I mentioned losing the home and all that process going on, I found that within a couple of years, half of those had been fulfilled. Now, maybe I just recognize that because I wrote them down, that I could see them. So it's a good way to sort of check back and to recognize, wow, so many of my dreams came true. And then since that time, all of them have come true. So putting things down on paper, again, saying them out loud, this puts things more into action mode. And so have them imagine what would be their dreams, what would they want to do if they could do anything they wanted to do. It helps them take those first small steps towards a reimagined future. We want to be able to help them turn new possibilities into action, and we can offer things like vision boarding, help them create a vision board, help them collage, help them have a future self journal where they write things about their future self would do. Like 1 year from now today, what would my future self be saying about the year that went by? And what are the things that I want to see happen? Yeah, 1 year my mortgage got paid off. And 1 year ago from today, I had no idea that I would be talking to people on Substack. There's all these things are happening now that I didn't think would happen before. And so you put those out there into your future, and those become very compelling. It starts driving you towards them. Goal setting can be helpful. A lot of people, because of the trauma, have a difficulty sort of concentrating and focusing. And so goals are hard. Use SMART goal steps. And so you can help them with that process, and who's going to help them with the accountability and support along the way. So for you, trauma champion, what's one new idea, goal, or opportunity that emerged for you or in your work after a challenge? What's one new idea, goal, or opportunity that emerged for you after a challenge? What came up for you that you hadn't considered was a new possibility? While you're thinking about that, I'm going to move to our fifth area, which is the benefit of post-traumatic growth of spiritual and existential growth. Now, this is a interesting one that a lot of people get a little confused by because of the wording itself. It has the obvious face value meaning of actual spiritual growth, but it doesn't necessarily mean religion. It can mean religion, and often for a lot of people, it does refer to their faith or a faith that they didn't have a faith or a renewed sense of their faith that maybe they had set aside or hadn't really participated in. But it also could be a seeking or finding a greater sense of purpose in life, or having a greater sense of being connected to things where they hadn't really been connected to anything before, or really stood up for anything before. And so this becomes part not just of an activity, but a part of a new sense of their own identity. So after a profound hardship, many people will ask questions like, why am I here? Why do I exist? What really matters in my life? So very similar to some of the other ones like new possibilities, but they find renewed faith in their life. They discover new purposes through service. They find creative activities that they never thought they would ever do, and their life changes as a result of it. A greater sense of connection to something larger than themselves. So, as professionals, we can help other people honor this path that they're going on, whether it's our similar path or not, but just to have respect for what their path is, whether it's a faith-based path or a nature-centered path or maybe purely humanistic, whatever it might be, but support them in their search for meaning as an essential part of their own healing. So we want to help people explore deeper meanings after trauma, and we can offer them a spiritual growth toolbox, if you will. This might involve going through a book or being part of a study group or tuning them into podcasts and things that they can learn new things about their faith or the areas that they are suddenly interested in. Um, you can spark reflection and share dialogue around these things. Be interested in the things that they believe and what it is they're discovering. And there's things called spiritual direction. One of the people on our list here today, Denise, I encourage you to check out her Substack as well. She's a spiritual director for those who are going through faith-based issues or concerns or questions or struggles. I've gone through the spiritual direction training myself, um, and it helps them with different practices. The GROW model that I utilize in trauma healing and recovery, grounding, recognition of roots, openness to healing, and walking in wholeness, GROW, is based on really a spiritual direction format, even though it's not religion based. Specifically, it looks at practices in each of those areas, practices in grounding, practices in recognizing wounds and roots to our issues, beliefs, patterns, um, and then looking at being open to new possibilities and open to establishing new practices in our life and sustaining that through walking through wholeness. And you can get more information on that in the Trauma Champion. But that's based on this idea of spiritual or existential growth. So if you're joining us, we're talking and kind of coming to some of the end of our discussion here about the 5 benefits of post-traumatic growth and looking at how post-traumatic growth is the other side of trauma, what comes as a result of crisis and adverse events in our life, and develop a new meaning, new purpose, new growth. So practices like mindfulness, meditation, sometimes shadow work, other deeper sort of levels of things invite us to really explore um, our inner life and looking at finding new ways to integrate ourselves after going through a challenging situation. Trauma tends to not just isolate us, but dysregulate us and disconnects us and causes us to not have a sense of ourself any longer. And so going through some of these practices helps us find new integration. That's where the healing, the wholeness comes in. Adding service or volunteer activities can connect people to a purpose bigger than themselves. It turns their personal healing into community impact. How can I help my community? What's around me that needs help? Is it working at a homeless shelter? Is it supporting a cause for cleanup? Is it looking at some environmental sort of issue? Is there just something in my neighborhood of people who needs help that I can offer them? I have some clients who struggle with some cognitive kind of issues, and they need purpose. They can't do what they used to do. Uh, Therefore, they can't be resilient in that way, going back to original functioning, but they find different ways to help because they want to help. And that makes them feel like a sense of, I have some meaning, I have some purpose in life. And that gives them a sense of growth for them. So, what practice, value, or belief helps you make meaning when life becomes overwhelming? Maybe just a phrase, maybe it's just sort of a thought, maybe it's a quote. Put it in the chat there. Write a message about what practice, value, or belief helps you find meaning. It gives you a sense of purpose when life feels overwhelming. I'd like to hear from you. Also, if you have any questions about any of the 5 areas that we've been talking about. So in this post-traumatic growth, we're looking at the 5 benefits by Tedeschi and Calhoun: appreciation for life, meaningful relationships, greater personal growth, strength, openness to new possibilities, and finally, spiritual and existential change. So what is helpful? What will be helpful for you to know about these areas that you might have some curiosities around? So we have in a chat here some things that have been commented based on our my questions. For this one, like what belief or attitude or practice, mercy prayer, all things work together for good. Yeah, I like that one. I like both of those. I use those a lot. Um, Back in some of our other areas, we're looking at people that were supportive, that helped us through difficult situations, a therapist, a support group, a soul friend, a parenting class facilitator, who is now my boss. Oh, it's good. That's good to have your boss be a supportive kind of person. Jesus. So yes, people that have helped us through difficult circumstances and situations. How does this impact the community? We're going to kind of wrap up with that. How do how do we take this to a community level? Like we've been talking about how we can apply it to ourselves and look at it, how it can help people we're working with and discover these benefits. But how do we take it then to a more community broad level? Let's zoom out a little bit and see how these benefits can ripple across the community. How can we create a cultural shift, if you will? So whenever a workplace celebrates their staff, when schools embed trauma-informed practices into their policies, when neighborhoods host restorative circles or volunteer projects, or comes out to help someone in need, we're weaving growth into the very fabric of our daily lives. We are practicing what we preach, if you will. So these are some cross-cutting sort of applications that show how gratitude, connection, innovation, resiliency, personal meaning um, can be transformative and create change into our community. Um, some examples might be some workplace appreciation rituals that can help us combat burnout and help keep teams connected. When I was running mental health clinics, I would often have retreat days. I do at least 2 or 3 of them a year. Try to do it quarterly if I could, but usually it's 2 or 3 times a year, where we just had a day where we weren't allowed to talk about goals or programs. It would come up, but we try to not talk about all this stuff. Just play, just be together, to celebrate, to eat, to have fun, to do games. And I tried to find places that was affordable that we could all go to because we were a nonprofit, right? There's a reason they call it that. So we're trying to find ways to support the team, just appreciate them, and using appreciation rituals and any significant event and having a time for each staff meeting to hear strengths, hear successes, to celebrate things that people had been able to find or achieve or outcomes, personally or professionally. And so in doing that, we're humanizing the environment and creating an environment where burnout could stay away. um, a school that uses trauma informed. I do a lot of training in schools, and they might do a morning circle with their staff. They might do some mindful routines. Um, they're trying to build safety or teaching basic um, social emotional learning programs. A lot of schools now have, most schools have social emotional learning frameworks which teach responsibility taking and respect. And so there's some things there that's actually very helpful that go beyond just academics to, and a lot of kids who are gone through trauma can't focus or concentrate, right? So how can we help them move beyond? And we do that through some of these different social emotional learning programs or morning circles or mindful routines that we integrate. Valerie mentions here that they use staff meetings to discuss flowers and weeds. Okay, yeah, so we have to put a positive spin on every situation. So flowers and weeds, highs and lows, ups and downs, roses and thorns. I've heard different methods for that. Um, I did that in staff meetings myself as well. I did it also at home with my kids and grandkids now. And so it's a way of just being able to look at both the ups and the downs, the positive and the negatives that are going on, and not just focus on the negatives, but also the positive side of things as well. So very good, thanks. Uh, yeah, and Sherry mentions that in their classes, they always start off with wins and challenges. Same kind of ideas. Great, well, celebrating things. A little different there, but making sure we focus on those positive elements. So those are great. Those are excellent elements. Thank you very much for that. Um, There are also some things might be like some community restorative justice circles where neighborhoods and agencies come together to heal conflict or try to do some reconciliation among groups and to rebuild some trust. Public health campaigns. I did some training for public health programs and that highlights some local resiliency stories that are going on. Maybe some interfaith gatherings that unite people after crisis has occurred and come together to show support for one another, particularly if it happened to a different group of people and then showing support to them. That can be huge. So as we mentioned, there's some staff appreciation elements, gratitude gatherings, um, in Oregon schools, they're using morning circles to improve attendance and reducing disciplinary referrals. Santa Barbara here in California has a resilient Santa Barbara County, a coalition that unites different groups, nonprofits, public health educators, talk about trauma-informed resources. I recently spoke at a conference they had about a year ago. Um, Community dialogue, restorative circles in Denver, neighborhoods are doing healing circles. Um, in some of the rural California areas, we're doing resiliency hackathons to co-design youth mental health programs with teens. And I was involved in TAG groups, our traditional age youth, and looking at some drop-in places where kids could drop in after school when they didn't have a place to go to or being home was not a safe place for them. So a lot of trauma-informed care kind of ideas, a lot of post-traumatic growth ideas, a lot of wellness sort of programs. And you might have some other ones that are using. I always enjoy anything that we can do that involves art or storytelling, um, creating a mosaic wall for survivors and families to contribute, things for remembrance. Anything like that, a day of remembrance, a day of hope, art events. I think all of these things that promote mental health, um, I think all these things support and destigmatize and allow people to understand their strengths and their meaning. Well, this is fun. So let me see, is there any other questions or any other ideas or thoughts of what anybody's using in some of the work that you are engaged in? Maybe in the community, is there something locally that's going on in your community that you can say, yeah, that represents this area of post-traumatic growth or resiliency? What are you noticing or being a part of? Well, we're coming to the end. This was fun. This is my first live session, and so it was a lot of fun to do that. We'll definitely be having some more. I appreciate everyone that showed up and participated and commented. Thank you so much for being here. If you're not already a member of the Trauma Champions newsletter and community, I appreciate you coming and following us and become a subscriber. If you want to support us financially, the pay that'd be great. All of our paid members get access to our Trauma Collective, which has over 100 different resources, checklists, special reports, um, things that I'm talking about today for communities and individuals. And you can utilize those for your own programs, schools, and businesses. So I hope you look more into that if you wish to be a paid subscriber. And then, of course, if you or your agency would like to see some training on these topics, obviously this is a 45-minute or less training. So I'd love to come and talk with you more about doing something on a more deeper level. So again, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate everybody, and I hope you look forward to our next event, maybe in the next couple weeks. Okay, thank you. Take care.